Hi, welcome to the OneSource Innovation Kitchen. Today we'll be going over some programming of new recipes in our Blodgett Combi INVOQ. We'll be programming two separate recipes for a sous vide and finished porchetta that we will later turn into a composed plate. So starting from the idle or off position, you'll see how quickly the INVOQ is going to fire up and get me to my main home screen. From this point, I'm presented with a bunch of options. For today's video, we'll be showing you how to program a recipe. So first button I'm going to hit is that recipes, and you'll see we already have a catalog of some preloaded and some recipes we've added here at OneSource. Some things we do for staff meal, for events, things like that. So what I'm going to do now is hit create recipe. So I will be presented with some prompts to add a recipe name. So in this case, we'll do sous vide porchetta, as this will be the first part of our recipe, the initial sort of par cook. And then our secondary recipe will be the final roast where we get this crackling and the skin nice and crispy. So I'm able to provide a description for my recipe. In this case, we will type in 18-hour par cook, just as a reference point for when I go to open the recipe. The next thing I'm going to do is hit this little star up here in the corner. That's going to add it to a list of favorite recipes so I can easily access the recipe without having to swipe through a bunch of different recipes. I can now add a picture of what I would like to match up with my porchetta. And if I'm not mistaken, we do have a picture down here of a porchetta right there. All right, I'm now also going to assign this to a group. So I have the option at this point to assign it to a day part group, breakfast, lunch, dinner. You can see here it's categorized by cakes, eggs, sweets, fish, pastries, things like that. I'm going to add it to our pork group, hit our check mark, and at this point I'm ready to move on to the next stage of the recipe. So I'll hit check, and now I can add a step. So now I've set my temperature to 167 for the internal temperature of the chamber. I've set my fan at 50%. So we're going to set the first stage of the cook time to 10 hours and 30 minutes. I'm going to hit check. I'm going to add a secondary step for our second stage of the recipe, which will be the same parameters, still 167, still 50% fan. At this point, we're going to add the remaining 8 hours of the recipe. So now I've got a total cook time of 18 hours. Hit my check mark. And oh, I forgot to add a step. What do I want to do? I want to add a step that says load product. So at this point, I'm going to hit the note button. I will say load porchetta in perforated pan. We'll do perf pan. Okay. I'm going to hit my check to load the product there. All right. Hit my check mark. And now because I want that, it's all the way down at the bottom. All I'm going to do is hover over it. It's not going to be highlighted. And now I can move this up to the front. Okay. Hit my check mark. We have our sous vide porchetta right there. If I go to hit start, boom, it's asked me to load, and then it's going to get to my temperature. All right, so we finished our initial cook, the sous vide style cook of the porchetta, which is the first half of the recipe. Now we'll move into the roasting final stage of the recipe. So we've now been saved. I'm going to go back to create recipe. Crispy porchetta. Final cook stage is our description. We will use that same stock image just to keep things nice and uniform. There. Going to assign this back to our pork group so both those recipes are grouped together. And then I'm also going to star this for easy access so I can access it on my favorite recipes list. Now we will add a step. We're going to preheat the oven to 392 for 1 minute. We're going to actually be roasting this at 375 with an 80% fan. Preheating it to 392 is going to allow us a few moments to get the product loaded in and probed while we don't evacuate a ton of heat from the chamber. So that should be plenty of time to get up to 392. So we have our preheat stage. Now we're going to add our secondary stage, right? We're going to be on a convection cook at 385. We're going to be doing 80% fan to really get that skin nice and crispy. And we will be doing a probe cook to 145. At this point, we are ready to kind of load the second half of our porchetta in after it's been par cooked. And it'll take roughly about an hour for that final stage to get a nice crispy crackling and a juicy tender interior of the porchetta.